Right, Peter, let's get into it. This Robert
Mhm.
Jenrick mess. I gotta say, I quite enjoy how much the traitors were involved in this, and the fact that people were creating images of him, like in the traitor's castle, saying that Kemi's banished a traitor. It was all very entertaining, but should it really be entertaining? Because these people are deciding how we live, and how we live is not going great. What was your take on it?
I'm with you. I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, it made the front cover of the Sun newspaper. The image of them in the cloaks and everything. I thought it was very good. But that is going to stick with Robert Jenrick now. The traitor thing for the rest of his career. He's kind of toxic now to a degree because you can't just backstab one leader and then run to the other one and think, oh, this one's great, after you've just spent the last 2 years calling him every name under the sun. I mean, at what point do the politicians suddenly think that the public are stupid? I've never understood this. They treat everybody like that, and they don't really see what's going on. And that realistically, Jenrick's move was nothing but a career opportunity one. He sees the end of the Conservatives, rightly or wrongly, and he thinks reform of the future. So there he goes, because he could have gone at any other point, and yet he chose now. And that's only because I think if you go back a few days ago, you had Nadeem Zahawi, who used to be a Conservative Chancellor. They reform let him in. And the reformers weren't very happy about it because he's not exactly one of theirs. There was that kind of, the window was narrowing for Robert Jenrick to make the jump. So I think he rather forced it than anything else. There's a big theory going around, actually, that Robert Jenrick rather planted the speech to be found to force Kemi to kick him out and to force Nigel to take him. Yeah, I love, this is the thing. W1 is like high school. Westminster's high school. It really is. You can't sit with us. You were seen with that person. You were texting that person behind the other person's back. It is like that. But, it's got important things in the background that matter, like, running the country. And, I completely agree with you that it's stupid. It's realistic. It's just, we've got so many problems and we're doing these kind of tricks. Yeah, it's a bit of fun, but at some point you have to run the country, and nobody seems to be doing that, because even the Labour Party dipped in on this with Keir Starmer having a go at Kemi. And I was like, of all people to be having a go about leadership at the moment, you could just be quiet. Thank you very much.
No, you're so right. I mean, where to go with this? So, I mean, look, Kemi said in her sort of camera video, we're tired of the psychodrama.
Mm.
I mean, I want to be tired of it, but I cannot deny that all of this is entertaining. But as we're saying, but run the country like this, it's not funny. Like we have the actual traitors if we want to watch this kind of thing. We don't really expect this from you. On the reform side and sort of political persuasions aside, how do you think that this looks to reform voters? Because you could say, look, the problem with reform is that they don't have anyone really that's been in government, so they have to get some people in there that have been there, done that. But also, is it looking a bit like getting the band back together of just Tory rejects? Like, surely they need to diversify out and get some Labour and Lib Dems too if they're going to be a bit more of a cross-party. But then, I don't know enough about reform voters. Do they think, no, we want completely fresh faces, we don't want these rejects? How do you think it plays out?
Well, it's interesting because everything you've just said is a different bit of the reform voter base. They all can't decide on what to do with this, and that is part of the problem. They're a political party that is bound by, we don't like something. And they're not bound by, we want this. So because of that, whenever these situations happen, you suddenly, everything goes nuclear, because you're a traitor, you're this, you're that, you're the other, because they made it very personal. It's not a pragmatic party in terms of, like you say, getting that institutional memory, the people that know where the levers of power are and what to pull and when. They don't have that, but you can't bring that in if you just said that they're a unpatriotic or these kind of words, because you built them up in a certain image. So they're somewhat of a victim of their own narrative, because they just consistently protest, and now they're trying to form a government style party. Doesn't work. And until they finally realize that they have to find a unifying point that isn't hating something, they're going to have these issues. I actually think this is going to play very badly in the long run for reform, because Robert Jenrick is a political animal, and he's a very good one. And he will run rings around a lot of the reform kind of institution, like Nigel Farage, Lee Anderson, Richard Taizia Youssef, because, those aren't Westminster people. They don't know who the people are, what to do and when. And Robert Jenrick definitely does, because he's the Tory that kind of survived everything that went down. So, I think they somewhat let the fox amongst the hens. And it's going to be even more entertaining to watch all the people who called Robert Jenrick unpatriotic, not a real conservative, have to have a lot of egg on their face and tail between their legs and say, "Oh no, he's fine now. He said sorry." If this is the point, is that bit is going to sink them in the eyes of the public, because the British public hate hypocrisy more than anything else.
This is true. How do you think this all plays out from the perspective of they are getting some senior Tory rejects in there now, but these are all career politicians that will backstab to get the top jobs. And I think that from my perspective of reform, they poll really well. The momentum and the wind seems to be in their sails, but I'm like, I don't know if you're going to make it to the next general election. If you think of what happened with Rupert Lowe and those kind of things, it's like, I don't know. It seems like a bit like it's sort of built on sticks, but then you're having these heavyweights in that will cause trouble to try and get the top jobs. I don't know whether in the long run, like, the kind of context aside, can they contain these sort of characters and all sort of bow down to one leader, Nigel Farage, as the man driving the ship? I just don't see how that works without them all turning on each other before the next election.
Well, I think you bring up the best example, and that's Rupert Lowe. If they can't control Rupert Lowe, a political non-entity in terms of the Westminster system, how are they going to control any of these people that have survived being at the top of the Conservative Party, one of the most ruthless political parties in terms of backstabbing? They don't even stab you in the back, they'll stab you in the front. I mean, that's how bad they are. And I'm with you. I don't see it. I don't see how they survive unless they have some kind of an iron fist chief whip. And the one they've got at the minute is Lee Anderson. So, no, they don't have that at the moment. And it'll be just interesting to see how this all plays out, because I've said this for a very long time. The next general election is a very long way away. And this group of people have a tendency to implode just before they get into power. You look at UKIP, you look at the Brexit Party, you look at everything Nigel Farage touches. Just as you get near the power bit, it disappears. And it's going to be interesting to watch. But as a person who's predicted this, I have to admit, a little bit of I told you this was going to happen. It's been very entertaining today.
And how do you think this plays out for Kemi? Like, if you were in her position, and whether it was planted or not, you come across a defection speech, however that happens, do you think she was right to say, kicking you out of the shadow cabinet, the party, and removing the whip, and then going straight on socials to sort of get ahead of it? Because the first we heard of it was from Kemi, so she got to reclaim the narrative a little bit. A lot of the fun poked at Robert Jenrick, all about being a traitor, but how does it play out for Kemi?
I think Kemi did the best thing by kicking him out of the party. I think that was a very swift, not just suspending the whip, not kicking him out of the shadow cabinet. You're out. And that's it. There was a clear line that was drawn there. I think that was a very powerful message to send. Now, in the short term, it's going to hurt because, yet again, it's Tories leaking senior figures. The press is going to be all over it. Yes, again. But I will say in the long run, they've got rid of the fox. Robert Jenrick has overstepped his brief so many times that CCHQ is actually furious with him. Most people I speak to are just like, well, look, I'm really happy he's gone, but a small part of us is rather glad, because he was always undermining everything they were doing. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But for Kemi, I think in the long run, I think it's quite good, because also she's got rid of her main competition to be the next leader. So who are you replacing her with? The obvious choice was always Robert Jenrick. Not a thing anymore. So I think she's actually more secure now than she was just a few days ago.
And just before we move off it, what do you think of Labour and how this works for them? Because as you say, Keir Starmer tried to get his oar in. I think the entire country now unhappy with him, abysmal. Even like Labour voters I know just have no good words to say about him and how it's all going. So how do you think it plays out for him? But how do you think it plays out in the long run if we do go into the next election with a powerful reform, but also some Tory heartlands? Do we see a coalition on the left? Do we see a coalition on the right? How does this all play out for Labour?
Right. So it's quite interesting, really, because I think people have to remember the Rainbow Coalition. In other words, I think what will happen is a lot of people who think they would vote for, say, the Green Party or the Lib Dems will end up voting for the Labour Party to keep out reform. That kind of unifying, we don't like Nigel vote is very big. It's very powerful. If you look at the statistics, I think it was 51% of Lib Dem voters were willing to vote for a Labour candidate to keep out reform. I think it was like 37% of Green voters were willing to do the same. That is they're big numbers. And these are also groups that are very good at protest voting organisation. They know what they're doing. I think that, Labour have still in this game. They're still in it purely because they don't like Nigel. And yeah, so it's going to be very interesting how it all plays out. I don't see Starmer going in May. I really don't. Even if everyone keeps saying, oh, he's done after the elections. well, we said that after the last lot. He's still here. You know, at some point we have to realize the old rules don't apply anymore. We will just it's one of those we don't really know because we're writing the rule book as we're going along with all this stuff now because we're just so far down the rabbit hole. You know, I've come out the other side. It's rather ridiculous, but it's like you said, a small part of it is quite good fun.
It is. Just finger in the air then. I mean, I haven't seen any latest polls. I don't think they could have come out this quickly. Certainly not reacting to what happened with Robert Jenrick. What do you think? Do you think a bounce for reform or a drop for reform, Conservatives, Labour? How do you think this all would impact the polls?
I think, I'm going to say, I actually haven't seen any polling either. And I will say, I think the Tory vote will go down 1 or 2. And the reform will maybe go up 1 or 2. I don't see a big rocketing move either way because everybody's kind of like, we'll wait and see how this is going to play out. Because I think people understand that we got to let Jenrick maybe get his feet under the desk at reform. And Kemi actually came out of this pretty strong, I have to admit. Everyone was like, oh, it was punishing, it was this, it was that. Not if you look at today's headlines where everything mentions she sacked him first. That's the interesting bit. Every major newspaper in this country has this traitor or he was sacked vibe, even the ones that are more sympathetic to the right. I mean, if you look at the front cover of the Daily Mail, it's a plague on both of your houses. They're sick of all of this. So if the Mail isn't even on your side and you're on the Tory right, things aren't comfortable. But I do think 1 or 2, either way, I don't see a big meteoric move, if I'm honest.
Right, let's move on to the next story.
Subscribe for more content.